Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Pharside Pholios. We are continuing our month-long celebration of National Poetry Month and with a special series of author interviews along with our posts that you'd find on our Pharside Co-Ed Book Club Facebook page. So today's special guest is none other than Cheryl Robertson. Cheryl Lee Robertson is the author of 2 books of poetry, Promises and Epiphanies, which is a journey of self-discovery told through poetry and personal essays, and then Black Pearls, a collection of poetry exploring the world through the dual lens of Blackness and womanhood. She's a performance poet and has graced the stages of Passion for Christ Movement's Rhetoric, Poets in Autumn Tour, Legacy Disciples Conference Poetry Slam, and the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And she also blogs at sherylee.com and has a newly launched poetry podcast entitled Between Bars. So we welcome to the far side, Cheryl Lee Robertson. Thank you for
Thank you for having me, Monica. I'm excited to join you.
So let's get into it.
Okay.
So, what was the inspiration behind Black Pearls and Promises and Epiphanies?
Well, so Promises and Epiphanies is a journey of self-discovery, and it actually I stumbled into it. I actually was blogging for several years and writing poetry at the same time and performing it. And I got to a point where it was like, oh, I have a lot of content. Maybe I need to package it together. And I realized that there was a common theme in the poetry and the blogs, regardless of if I was talking about love or faith or any other topic. It was always this trying to find the truth, trying to find myself, trying to find my way. And so that's really what inspired me to pull it all together and put it in a book for Promises and Epiphanies. And then for Black Pearls, the idea for the book came to me before it came to me first. So it was a slightly different process. And I had written a few pieces that were basically dealing with social justice issues and things of that nature. And I realized with Black Pearls, a Black Pearl is a beautiful thing. It's a rare thing, but it's not really celebrated. A lot of people don't know about the rarity of it and the value of it. And so it just made me think about people and things in life that go overlooked. And so I wanted to shine light on those things and those people and those stories. So that's what the purpose of Black Pearls is, to kind of give voice to people and situations that are often overlooked or not celebrated enough.
So give us some background on your poetry journey. How long have you been writing poetry? And when did you realize that this was the form or shape your writing would take?
Well, I started writing poetry in middle school. I actually recently found an old journal that had a bunch of poems in it that I was writing. And I don't really know what made me start writing it. I just did. And then I didn't write any poetry again until after college. And the only thing that made me start writing again is I started going to spoken word events and I was enjoying what I was hearing. And I was like, I think I could probably do this. So I started writing, and then I felt like a spiritual aspect to my writing as well. So I felt like God wanted me to use more of my writing to share more about him and encourage people in a spiritual sense. So from there, I started doing more spoken word and doing it in church and things of that nature. So I really, at that point, started calling myself a poet, but I had probably been writing for many years before I officially accepted that. And even for a long time, I didn't call myself a poet. I called myself a spoken word artist because I don't feel like I have training in poetry or anything of that nature. So it's still something that's a little hard for me to, accept.
Well, that is very, interesting as to how you connect your faith to your writing and the messages that you share in your writing. So would you mind sharing a piece with us, with our audience?
Sure. Actually, since we're talking about faith, I thought that one piece that I would share is from my book, Promises and Epiphanies. And it is about faith, and it's entitled Trust Fund. They called him many names: God, Jehovah, Jesus, Father, but they all called him good. Whether they stood in pulpits, knelt at altars, sat in pews, or tread dusty roads and fields in flimsy shoes, their belief never faltered. At times singing in soaring soprano or bottom baritone, whether in spirited shouts or mournful moans, sometimes in tongues others could not understand, or even in silence with just a slight wave of the hand, in whatever manner they could, they called him good. Because they knew he filled the hollow bellies of crying children when the nation's headlines screamed depression, recession-proofed the family so it never went without a roof overhead, kept the sons while at war so none returned as walking dead, spread offspring across acres of rich countryside, deed of sale in hand, faces brimming with pride, because they came from slaves who once worked the land for free. They recalled how he kept danger, whether friend, foe, or complete stranger, at bay. They proudly say he would never lead them astray because he ordered their footsteps, caught their every misstep, so they called him good. That ensured future generations understood that it was he who had made us and not we ourselves. So I love to hear my grandfather delve into story because he tells how he went from tilling his parents' farm to owning a business up north, how he loved a sweet young woman who brought forth a precious baby girl into this world, how not long after, when his daughter was but an infant, in anguish, he buried that wife. But he cared for the child and left his heart to God, who finally sent another to share his life, which gives him confidence in the Lord's faithfulness and in his plan, makes him sing with a perfectly odd mixture of dependence and strength that he can't even walk without God holding his hand. And my granddad's just one of many, as I've heard plenty of testimonies from those close to me about the goodness of God. Those who think it not odd that they integrated schools as children, then went on to earn masters and PhDs. Those who saw no irony in being first-generation college graduates, only decades behind men and women whose only signature was a scribbled letter X. Those who were not the least bit perplexed as to how they overcame cancer or addiction. Those who had the same conviction regarding how they raised fatherless children, or what greater power sent home wayward husbands and men. No two stories were the same, each their own composition of exquisite joy and pain, yet the refrain remained the same. God is good. Now all I can do is pay forward that precious gift, lift my voice in song, poem, blog, or book, give someone on the outside an insider's look, offer the generations behind me a play-by-play of my life, portray every offensive and defensive move the Lord has made along the way, and pray that in time they'll find the truth and spread the good news. Hope that whatever name they call him, whatever medium they choose, they follow in their ancestors' shoes and call him good.
All the snaps, all the snaps, all the snaps.
Thank you.
Just very thought-provoking, and the way you make connections and you tell the story so people can pull those concepts and see the application and think through the message because you make it plain. So that's
what I try to do. Yeah.
That awesome piece. awesome piece.
Thanks.
And so I'd like to ask you, with your having written Black Pearls, which looks at empowering and womanhood, and then you've got another collection with the Promises and Epiphanies that has life lessons and faith lessons, and you've got poetry and prose. What do you see as the differences between the two, or how do they overlap or connect to each other?
Well, I think the main difference is that Promises and Epiphanies is really, there's so much searching within that book. And it's a very personal book. Everything is really written from my perspective, my life. It's pretty much on display, all my thoughts and feelings piled into this little book. And of course, it is partially poetry and then personal essays. And I think that Black Pearls, it's not like I had all the answers when I wrote it, but it is more of an observation of things happening. And there's still a lot of personal things in it, but I don't think there's as much searching and seeking. It's kind of like an observation. This is the world as it is. This is life as it is. What can we learn from it? How can we carry on and maintain some sort of hope or what have you? And it's completely poetry though. So that's a difference.
Okay. That's, I mean, combining, sometimes you do a lot of, you are able to explore more when you move towards prose and give more detail and thought in prose, as in comparison to poetry, so that you were able to kind of blend the two styles together, gives that kind of breadth and depth to your content, for you to reach those who are who listen to spoken word, who go to those spoken word events, those who are just lovers of poetry, those who read prose and essays and commentaries and things of that nature. So you touch on some of everything and give us food for thought when we're looking at Promises and Epiphanies, as well as with Black Pearls, which is really inspirational and motivating. So how does do you feel poetry speak to you, and how have you been able to use your voice in your poetry?
I think poetry packs a powerful punch, and it's quick and short, and really leaves something with you that is just delivered in a very quick and powerful way. Whereas other forms of writing, which I enjoy all, they take a lot longer to get to the point of it all. And so the punches may not be as powerful or as quick. So I think, too, I really appreciate the fact that so much of poetry is interpretation. So the reader or the listener, in whichever case, tends to bring a lot to the poem because of the fact that you aren't able to say as much as you want. So I've always found it interesting. Sometimes I'll do a poem, and what people say their primary takeaway from the poem wasn't what I would have thought that would have been. But it really gives so much room for interpretation, even though I consider myself pretty, I speak pretty plainly in my poetry, because I want everyone to get it. But on top of that, it's interesting that their takeaway is different. So you can leave a poem with like one or two lines that really hit and spoke to you in a meaningful way. Whereas I think when you have a longer body of work, it's really a lot harder to have that one or two lines that really just stick with you and evoke change. So I think, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. And then the other piece of that was, how have you been able to find your voice in your poetry and your work?
Well, I think that's a journey too. So I think too, thinking of poetry in that sense in terms of packing a powerful punch and the beauty of lines and how important lines are is something that's helped me find my voice. I've taken classes in other forms of writing, like fiction and what have you. And it's always been interesting how we start with like one line and you're really trying to make that opening line something that really hits the reader off the bat. So I've taken that into my poetry so that I'm hopeful that people are able to find, even if not the first line, there's one or two lines that are going to stick with them that after it's all said and done, they may not get everything, but they got those one or two tidbits. So I think that's kind of my voice coming through in terms of making sure that there's one or two tidbits that they can walk away from the poem with.
So we've got listeners and viewers, those who will catch the replay, that are aspiring writers or currently in the process of writing. So what are maybe 3 tips that you would provide for those aspiring poets who may be looking to publish or do as you have done as far as being a spoken word artist and performing?
Sure. I would say spend time defining your voice. I think that's important. Of course, you're going to listen to and read other poets, but don't get so caught up in what they're doing that you're trying to mimic it. You still want to be unique. And it's interesting to me that sometimes people are like, oh, I knew that was you, even though it may be a piece that they're seeing written or they don't hear my voice or what have you, someone else reads it. They can just tell that the language is mine. And so I think it's important to kind of have your own voice, and it's what will make you stick out from others. In terms of performance, on the one hand, I say practice, practice, practice. I practice more than most people realize because there is a lot of pressure in performance poetry to have your poems memorized. I think that's changing a little bit, but so with that being said, when you have something memorized so perfectly, if you miss a line or something, it can really throw you off. So for one, I say practice a lot so that the chances of that are less likely. But on top of that, I would say kind of get out of your head so much that you're not so focused on the audience, what have you, that it's you and the poem and the delivery, so that little things like that don't really pull you out of it. And then finally, I would just say come back to the writing whenever you find yourself drifting away. Writing has really been a source of self-discovery, as I said, but healing for me too. Anything that I don't understand, things that hurt, honestly, feelings and what have you, I try to bring them to the page, and sometimes I do run away from the page for that very reason. But I think that writing is a gift from God. For that reason, it heals the writer, and I think it's healing to the audience as well. And I think you owe it to yourself, even as difficult as it may be, to always come back to the writing. So that's something that I did very recently. I just haven't written in a long time. So 2021 has been about me trying to get back to the writing. So I would encourage everyone to stick with the craft.
This is really some helpful information to anyone out there writing, who are listening, watching live, or will come back and catch the replay, just to, be your authentic self, to, read others, to practice. Practice makes perfect. And not to allow yourself to get stuck in the trap of, mimicking others and really trying to find your own authentic voice in order to really present the message you're trying to convey. So thank you for those great, wonderful tips. So when I say representation matters, What does that mean to you, especially for these collections with Black Pearls and then with Promises and Epiphanies, Life Revelations through Poetry and Prose?
People need to see themselves. And that's something that I've always really known, but it's something that's even more clear over the years as I've grown up. Just um, in terms of finding yourself, finding confidence, knowing your purpose and why you're here, seeing other people walk out that purpose, people who look like you, people who have similar experiences as you. It's so important to have that. And I think so many people may take that for granted because they do have it. But particularly as Black women, I know that it's something that is not always as prevalent. And that's definitely what drove me to write Black Pearls in particular, because I just felt as if, well, Black women, we have, two challenging aspects of our being, that there's beauty in them and there's strength in them, but there's also struggle in being a Black woman. And I really wanted to explore that. And I don't think that anyone can completely relate to it if you're not a Black woman. So I think that by me speaking to it, I have lived experiences that will resonate with other Black women who are in the same place. So I want them to know that, you're seen, you're heard, you're understood, you're loved, you're valued. And that you may not realize it, as you're writing, it doesn't seem like a big deal. But when you hear back from people how those words have encouraged them, what it means to them to see you in that place, it's just powerful, and you couldn't imagine. And particularly, I'll say for young people, whenever I've performed for young women, young boys, they just are really encouraged to see a Black person who looks like them, who is able to share ideas. And it just gives them the confidence to know that they can do it too. So if they want to be a writer, yes, they can do that, or whatever else it is on the earth that they've been placed here to do. It gives them the confidence to know that they're able.
All right. For our viewers and listeners, can you tell us how we can follow you on social media, how they can purchase your works?
Sure. On social media, you can find me on both Facebook and Instagram at Sheryl Lee Writes. So I think you'll see my name on the screen, Sheryl Lee, SherylLeigh, and then Writes, of course, WRITES. On Twitter, it's just Sheryl Lee. And then, of course, I have a website. It's www.sheryllee.com. If you're curious, that's my first and my middle name kind of woven together. I thought it made for a better, shorter stage name than Sheryl Robertson. But and then I had copies of my book somewhere, but I don't know where I put them. That's crazy. But I do have Promises and Epiphanies is here. You can find that on my website. There's a link to Amazon. And then Black Pearls as well, although this is a proof, so ignore that. But you can find them both on Amazon if you're looking, and hopefully you'll enjoy them and be blessed.
Well, can you close us out with another piece?
Sure. And I forgot to say, you can also find my new podcast, Between Bars, which I just launched 2 weeks ago. And basically I'm sharing poetry and then kind of giving the stories behind the poems. I am torn on my last piece. I think a favorite that everyone has in mind is particularly long. So I'm going to skip that one. I'll read the title piece for Black Pearls, which kind of speaks to, treasuring things that aren't often treasured. So this is Black Pearls. How many times has the world been turned upside down in the name of the diamond? How often have men dug up rich earth and mined fruitful ground in search of her shine? How many souls have been sold for a chance encounter with the diamond's glitter? Seduced by her sparkle, how many heads have bowed at earth's altar, begging for a gleaming miracle? How much blood bats the leaves and courses through streams of regions and countries that sought diamond as source of power and salvation? How much propaganda has been spun to present her as the standard of beauty? How many adjustments made to manipulate her rarity? How many lies told to authenticate her purity? At whose expense did the industry calculate her expense? What of the other gems? Overlooked, unappreciated, disregarded, made to feel less than? What of the precious stones regarded as rhinestone simply because they are not diamond? Far from counterfeit, these originals are equally beautiful, no less valuable, yet not chosen, lacking the publicity and promotion needed to elicit global affection. What of the other gems? What becomes of the little known black pearl? Does she beg the world to take notice of her elegance? Does she hope it will look past the diamond's flash to see her substance? In the past, she would emerge from the diamond's shadow, twisting and turning in the sunlight, and wonder why people were not enchanted by her iridescent glow. Then she realized, just as rainbows go unappreciated by the colorblind, some cannot look past conditioned minds to truly see her. Yet she does not require their gaze to stand in the truth of her glory. She is exquisite, precious, treasured collaboration between God and nature, a portrait of exceptional strength. Man may manufacture markets in which diamonds are the prized jewel, but God appraised her invaluable the moment he made her black pearl.
Awesome. It has been a joy and a pleasure, Cheryl Robertson, to have you with the Pharside on today. And so we wish you continued success with Black Pearls, along with Promises and Epiphanies, Life Revelations through Poetry and Prose, your podcast, your blog, and everything that you've got coming and plan to do. You're just such a gift to the arts, to the ministry as well, with how you shape and use words. And we're blessed with your presence on today. So thank you so much for spending this time with us this afternoon on the Pharside. And we wish you continued success.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed myself.
Awesome. So we want to remind our watching and live audience, as well as those who will be coming in to catch the replay, to make sure that you are staying tuned to the Pharside Co-Ed Book Club Facebook page for more author interviews and posts as we celebrate National Poetry Month during the month of April. So until next time, many roots, many voices are a part of the infinite story. So plant your seed and have a great and wonderful day.